Welcome back, everybody, to the Chensor Dynasty. Here we are now going to begin the Q&A section, the AskJCHENSOR section. We were just talking about the SF6 netcode debacle and all the drama that's been going with it. I tried to lay out as many of the facts that I could so that people have a better understanding of exactly what's going on. Hi, Jasmine. How you doing? How you doing, Jasmine? Oh. Mwah, mwah. Hi, kitty. Lou41 asks, what happens to the iconic James phrase and such like that? I have tried very hard to excise that phrase from my dialogue because it was such a go-to. I could say it, but if I do say it, I would like to do it on purpose. Are you not a mod, Nutacon, here? Are you not a mod here? That seems kind of like a mistake here. But I don't know how to... I should just be able to do it this way. Let's see. Because you should definitely be a mod. So there you go. So Nutacon is now a mod here. Woohoo! Okay, there you go. I should also mod Super Moose as well. These are guys that I have obviously seen so many times in my chat, and I've met a lot of them in person, and these are all good people here and everything like that. So there you go. So alright, so Coinism has a question for me. My little brother thinks he might make it to the top 50 melee rankings. How can I help him celebrate? Fingers crossed. I mean, if he makes it there, I mean, that's a lot of the reward right there. He should be treating you to stuff, right? I'm not sure how you would help him celebrate. AJP Brooks, welcome. Thank you for the subscription. You subscribed for 8 months. Appreciate it very, very much. Burstark had a great question. Oh yeah, definitely nice meeting you as well, Fuse Coast. Burstark had a really good question that he had before the actual section began, and I told him to hold it and copy paste it here. It was long, so it is one of those novels, but I don't care. So if you want to go ahead and put that in there. How excited are you for Grand Blue's release? I'm pretty excited for it. I'm really curious about it, and actually if you do have a huge interest in Grand Blue Fantasy, you will want to make sure to tune in to the Tuesday show tomorrow, because we have not had a chance to announce something yet, but there should be something cool happening for Grand Blue Fantasy on the Tuesday show tomorrow. So there you go. But keep an eye on the twits, and then we should be able to talk about these things and stuff like that. So, yeah, no problem, Fuse Coast. Take your time, dude. Take your time. Again, my whole thing is that we're all in this situation, right? I don't deserve anybody's money from subscriptions or donations. I earn it, right? If it's something that you feel like you want to help, or if you feel like I provide the content for you to subscribe, that is something that's very appreciated. That's why the Amazon Prime thing is so cool, because it's a free way to subscribe to other people, and that helps a lot. Even if you don't use it for me, please use your Amazon Prime Twitch subscription for somebody, because Vicious just got partnered, because it is the lifeblood of a lot of streamers. Subscriptions get you infinitely more money than ads will. As I explained to other people in the past, I restreamed Red Bull Kumite for about 9 hours, averaged about 200 and some viewers. The entire 9 hours, I ran ads the whole entire time, and I got $4.16 or something like that. Ads are not the way you make money on Twitch. So there you go. I'm probably not supposed to talk about that publicly, but whatever. I don't care. I don't care. That's the way it works. Oh, whoa, really? Someone on... are they spamming in my Discord now? Are they spamming in my Discord? I could do a State of the FGC like I did last year, an Unchenzord over there. Oh, Jesus. Alright, hang on a second. Drunken Banana, I am going to how do I do this? I don't even know. Profile, I don't even know how to mod people on Discord. I swear, I'm so bad at Discord. Oh, here we go, roles, there we go. Alright. Drunken Banana, you are now an advisor. I'm gonna change Auric into an advisor as well. Let's see, who else can I get? Super Moose, you are now an advisor. There you go. So I have advisored a few of you there. So you guys can now do all sorts of fun stuff over there. So if he's doing anything crazy, if he's spamming the server and just like not even on topic or whatever like that, feel free to ban him. I've given my advisors in that Discord carte blanche to ban people who are not contributing or are being toxic. If you guys want to have a nice fighting game environment to talk about fighting games, and you know, where we try to keep the toxicity levels as low as possible, feel free to join the Discord here in the chat right now, so you guys can go over there and talk with people. I think there's like 600 people in there right now. There's like 600 people in the Discord, and so a lot of good people there. They set up a lot of matches and everything like that, and there you go. So there you go, Nutacon. That's funny. Yes, that is right, Kitty. But yeah, if you guys have any questions for me or anything, ask me anything, kind of things like that. Or if you want have some stuff that you want to talk about the netcode stuff, like I said, Burstark, you said you had a big old text block that you were talking about stuff that I kind of wanted to talk about, that I wanted to respond to as well. Feel free to repost that into the chat. If anybody else has any concerns or has a different viewpoint on the whole patch thing, or can express a little bit more of the frustration. I don't see anything. That's really weird, Burstark. I'm not getting any messages from you. That's really, really weird. I wonder if, oh, okay, so honestly, you're putting into separate things. Honestly, by this point, the smartest move from Capcom would be to take the humble approach, acknowledging things the way they are, give Altimor props and announce some kind of work into investigating and integrating the improvements. Maybe go above and beyond with some compensation, even though Altimor did say they are free to use the patch. It's not a realistic thing to hope, I know, but it would be a good step and make good use of the momentum they've had with Monster Hunter, the RE remakes, and so on. There you go. Yeah, I kind of agree with that, though it's hard, and I mentioned this last time in the previous talk about this, and again, it's not an excuse, but I know because they're a Japanese company, the way they approach things are very different. It's very, you know, you don't sit there and openly admit mistakes. Might not even be the best idea for companies to do something like that, just to admit that everything is going wrong or whatever like that. But, you know, I do feel like something needs to happen, or at least they need to say something soon. Otherwise, there is going to be a lot of problems happening. Have I thought about trying out for commentary for Smash Brothers? Absolutely, Water Kirby. There was one point in time I really wanted to do Smash Ultimate commentary. Then I just didn't end up playing the game very often because it just wasn't one of the games that I could keep in my rotation. And I mean, honestly, also, I don't know if you're suggesting that from a monetary standpoint as well, so that I can get paid doing Smash commentary. I've heard Smash commentators, unfortunately, they get paid even less than a lot of the fighting game commentators, because they don't have an official world tour and stuff like that, because it is just like, for us, it's actually a little bit better because we do have Capcom giving us a world tour, and so Capcom can actually, you know, pay us at least reasonable amounts for doing commentary for them. But since Smash is all community, and community has even less money than anyone else, they can barely pay the commentators, you know, a livable wage kind of thing like that. It's very tough. It's hard, yeah. So they are definitely, dude. Socrates, I miss Soul Calibur so much. I've almost been tempted to try to jump back onto it. Alex Roca asks, do you think, and again, if you want to make sure I see your question, make sure you type @jchensor. And Fat Guy too, that is true. They never intended Smash to be competitive, but nowadays, I think it's different. I think that they understand it a little bit more because their balance patches have been more on point. They seem to understand a lot more stuff, and their game is, you know, in a pretty good state, I've heard. So, but Alex Roca asks, James, do you think Capcom will fix the netcode in time for IWO? They better. If they don't, then it's going to be completely invalidated, or they force everybody to play on PS4, which will make a lot of people unhappy because they would have to play with a bad patch version anyway. Or they just fix they implement the fix and everything will be great. And again, even though Altimor has his fix on the license that it makes it free, right, on the, I think it's what, the MIT license or something like that, the same thing that GGPO is on right now, even though that it's there, you know, Capcom, if Capcom carte blanche just takes Altimor's fix and implements it and release it, that is also irresponsible of Capcom, because they would have more resources to do more tests, and so they would have to do a lot of tests themselves to try to fix the fringe cases in which they would actually make the code worse. So I want people to understand that as well from a software standpoint. Just because Altimor created this code and put it out, and Altimor would tell you the exact same thing, just because he wrote this doesn't mean that they should just take it, plug it in, and just be good. That they should try to do more tests if they have more facilities for network tests and stuff like that. They should definitely kind of do things like that. I've read the season changes for Killick. He actually seems a lot better now and seems a lot more fun. And I've even seen people say that he's kind of gone up on tiers. So I wish I really, really would like to. Dude, I can't even tell you how often I've copy and pasted from Stack Overflow, Fat Guy. I don't even wanna front how often I've copy and pasted from Stack Overflow. But even when you do that, even when you do copy paste stuff from Stack Overflow, you still test it, you still run through the code, you still debug step by step, going line by line and making sure that it handles the case. So I mean, here's the thing, programs are, what a lot of people don't understand about programs, they're designed to handle all the edge cases. If you write your code and you don't take into account what happens, someone passes you a 0, passes you a negative number, passes you a letter, passes you a double byte character, passes you a high ASCII character, passes you something with a bunch of underscores, passes you something with spaces, passes you something with question marks, passes something you with hashtags, passes you something with exclamation marks, etc., etc. If you don't test all those scenarios, you have a problem, and the code should be able to handle all of it, right? So even if the thing that passes this information to this function, make sure it has all the stuff in there that it will never pass spaces and all this stuff like that, you would still better write this code to handle all those cases, because someone else is going to be like, this is a useful function, I'm going to use it, and they don't have the check, and now your program's going to blow up. So even if function A, make sure it doesn't pass any illegal characters into your function, you still got to test for every single one of those illegal functions. Like, that's kind of how it works. So when you copy and paste something from Stack Overflow, you can put it in there, but then you've still got to make sure you test all of the scenarios and everything like that. Coding is not easy. Coding is not straightforward and simple. And it's not magic either. In fact, it's the complete opposite of magic, which is why it's so hard, is that you can't just tell code to do things. You literally have, the interesting thing is there's these things, and sorry, I'm just talking about programming here. There's these things called code coverage trackers, right? Where basically they'll integrate their own code into your code, and as you test the program, it sends information to a server, and when you check the server, you can see how much of your code was actually executed. How much of your code was actually executed. And the trickiest part about code is that if you actually do that and make your program do everything that it's supposed to do, most oftentimes you will have about 10% of your code executed. Maybe 20, maybe 30, maybe 40% of your code executed, maybe 50% of your code executed. Because half the code, maybe more than half the code, are all error sections, are all conditions that should never be executed, but they're in there just in case they are. So when you write code, you can't just write code to do what you need it to do. You've also got to write a ton of code to make sure it doesn't do what you don't want it to do. It's so painful, dude. It's so painful. Man, whew, God. You're the kind of guy that submits a programming assignment without running it first. Asian bro, I never want you to code anything for me ever. And coding is not simple. So that's why when a lot of people are mad, like, oh, birdie jump light kick, after it finishes whiffing, he's invincible on the way down. Don't they test their product? It's like, Jesus, come on, people. Anybody who's coded before knows how hard it is to code these things, man. It's not easy at all. It is a pain in the butt to write code and everything like that. So again, even if Capcom acknowledges and say, we're working on a fix now, we can't expect it next week. We can't expect it in 2 weeks. And I've done that before, Burstark. I've written stuff that are public servers and stuff like that I was like, I'm just doing this small fix. It couldn't possibly break anything. Let me change this, push this out, make sure, because I want this fix out there as fast as possible. And it ends up breaking everything. And you're like, fuck, I gotta now undo this. I've got to revert this and put it back and try to do, like, it's always a bad idea to do that. Always a bad idea to do that. Oh, man. Coding, I've always said that if you are a coder, you have to also be partially a masochist. Like, that's the way that it works. You have to be partially a masochist. Otherwise, you probably can't be a coder. Oh, what is my game of the decade? Jesus, that sounds nutso. Like when did Final Fantasy VI come out? Oh, but that's, okay, that was previous decade. So those are, geez, if I wanted to talk about this decade, I mean, it might be like Breath of the Wild or something like that. So, yeah, there's a lot of funny things that you can do to your programs and stuff. There was one time I wrote a program to do something and I thought it was just like the simplest thing, and when someone ran it on their machine, it just spiked their performance all the way up to 99%. Their processes were running at 99%, and he was like, why is my machine doing this when I run your program? And I was like, oh God, I know exactly what I was doing. I know what I did. Basically, I just wrote a loop that checked for the existence of a file to make sure that it could advance to the next section. So I just wrote the loop to check for the file, but I forgot to add a pause in between each check. So it literally was just using every bit of the processing power it could find to keep checking for this file about 100,000 times every second. And I was like, oh God. And all you have to do is put in a pause for like a millisecond, and all of a sudden it's calmed down and it's fine. And I was like, oh, jeez. Yeah, what's my favorite programming language? So I spent most of my time programming in Java. I did transition over to C#, and I really do like C# a lot. My favorite things about C# were how they handled collections, and how you could actually do very SQL like calls on collections, where you could use link on collections, which was really, really nice. Lines of code that used to take like 5 lines of code, 10 lines of code, could be changed into 1 line of code with just some proper link calls, and it was actually really, really nice. I actually kind of liked that way. So yeah, no, L4 to Dynamite, exactly, link. So Python is not a programming language, Tap2GG. I'm gonna be that snob. Python is not a programming language. Python is a scripting language. Python is a scripting language. It's not coding. So there you go. Do the financial health of the FGC hinge on the success of the fighting game makers? Absolutely, Crick Fuji. Now, the fighting game community will always survive despite them, because even if all of a sudden this year every fighting game that came out and every patch that came out ruined every game to the point of destruction, we would still have the existing games, and people like Altimor would know how to revert patches back to original versions and stuff like that, and we would be able to just to keep playing it. So the FGC would continue, but no one would be able to make a career off of it and stuff like that. Nobody can make really a career off of it right now. A lot of us are trying to make it work, and it is not something that is particularly viable, but we're trying our best right now. We are trying our best. So yeah, JavaScript, scripter. See, I never did a lot of JavaScript stuff. I've never done a lot of CSS stuff. And I've actually got to sit down and learn it now, because that's actually what's going to help me fix my layouts down here. My layouts down here are all different elements. Like every single one of these things is an element. So if you actually look at my XSplit window, I have like 30 things in my element list, and it's really bogs down my XSplit a lot. I probably shouldn't do that, but I do that as a way of being modular and dynamic, right? So I can easily do stuff like, you know, change from this camera angle to this camera angle, etc., so that it's easy for me to adjust the text, all stuff like that. So what dream job do I want related to the fighting game community? If I can keep doing commentary, I would love to do commentary. If I could actually make a fighting game or just be the combat designer on a fighting game, that would actually be kind of fun as well. Have you ever thought about streaming myself making the RPG maker with contributions for the chat Discord? As a coder, I've never coded Unity or in anything like that. I have people tell me all the time that I really need to sit down and start learning Unity, because then I am a programmer. I would be able to make games and stuff like that, and it would probably be a lot easier for me to do than a lot of other people. So I've thought about that. I've thought about sitting down and learning some Unity. If you guys would actually be super interested in me streaming my Unity learning sessions, maybe I can actually do that. I think that would actually be kind of fun. Siamese guy says, go work for Capcom. Let's talk about Unity a little bit more. So I think it would actually be kind of fun to watch a lot of people. I don't know, maybe people would find it fun if they actually learned with me at the exact same time. Maybe that would actually be kind of fun to do. Maybe I can try that one of these days on stream and just start, and yeah, we could all learn together. I could basically kind of do a class where I'm learning Unity with you guys, and we can kind of figure out stuff at the same time. That might actually be kind of neat. That might actually be kind of fun, because then a lot of people can learn it at the same time. Best and worst moments of my commentating career. One of the worst moments of my commentating career is one of those things that, you know, if there was archives, I would probably be in trouble, but there was definitely one time, you know, this was back in 2010? Before all of us were a little bit more aware. I mean, we were still using terrible, you know, language while we were doing commentary. We didn't care. There was none of this idea of trying to have, you know, be, you know, welcoming in our community and stuff like that. But shout outs to NDO103. Wow, 29 months. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. But probably one of the worst commentating things I've ever done. And even though this was back in 2010 or 2011, even when I said it back then, I didn't like it. And I've never forgotten it. But I was talking about, there was a female fighting game player member on the stream playing, and we were talking about how strong she was. And I made some sort of comment about, you know, like, oh, like, you know, here's my hotel key or something like that. And I made like some sort of joke like that. And even to this day, like, it actually kind of grosses me out that I even made that joke. As soon as it came out of my mouth, I wasn't comfortable with it. And ever since then, it's just something that I've never forgotten. And it's always been something that I've always regretted saying. And like I said, I'm really glad there's no archives from back in those kind of days. You know what I mean? Otherwise, that would be floating around being like, look at James, this terrible human being and stuff like that. And honestly, I do feel like I was a terrible human being for even saying something like that. You know, like I said, this was 2010, and I was just like, to this day, I wish I had never said that. It makes me sad to me that I even made a joke like that at one point in time. In terms of best commentary moments, it's hard to say. It's really hard to say. There's a lot of things that have happened that have just been wonderful. And the reason why, you know, sometimes commentary can be so fun and such a joy is that when the players do amazing things, it just makes it that much easier to commentate, right? It just makes it that easy to commentate. It's really hard. Yeah, right, Super Moose? 2010 wasn't that long. Oh my god, it was a decade ago. Street Fighter V, my favorite to commentate. Not necessarily. Street Fighter V is definitely the one that I know the most, and I'm the most familiar with the scene and everything like that. I would love it if I could commentate Guilty Gear more. Guilty Gear has always been one of my favorite games to commentate. I love commentating Guilty Gear. I'm actually really enjoying commentating Samurai Showdown right now because Samurai Showdown, I feel like, requires a very certain kind of commentary. And it fits kind of with what I want to, the kind of commentary that I like to do. But those three are probably the ones that I enjoy the most. Super Turbo is probably the one that I enjoy commentating the absolute most. But that's because I just have such an affinity for Super Turbo. Shout outs to Say No to Weebs for the continued subscription. 6 months on a 4-month streak. Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. So, yeah, I'm really excited for Guilty Gear Strive. Because despite the fact that a lot of people are frustrated, there's a lot of potential for it to do a lot of good things. Yeah, Guilty Gear is tough. It's tough because there's a lot of knowledge in that game. And again, I don't play it enough to know enough details about the matchups and you know, clearly decide whether, or clearly understand if this character has an advantage. I know everything that's happening. I know all the systems in the game. And, you know, I'm a little behind in keeping up even with the most recent patches and stuff like that, because after the most recent patch, I never really sat down and played it all that much. But, you know, it's just kind of one of those things that was, that's tough, so. Right, exactly. Even if it's easier, it'll be hard to play. But the point is, it's not that the point is not necessarily that we're trying to make Strive easier to play. The point that Daisuke is trying to make is that he's trying to make it different enough that legacy players don't have such a distinct advantage anymore. He's going the Street Fighter route, in which the next game coming out is different enough that newer players can come in and be sort of on equal footing with the people who have been playing the game for a very long time. Guilty Gear and Tekken are two of the biggest games in terms of legacy and having a legacy advantage, right? I don't even count Blaze Blue as all a bunch of different games because I feel like they've all been one game so far, right? Guilty Gear Strive clearly is a brand new game with brand new models and everything like that. So I feel like that's what he's just trying to do, to be honest with you. So I don't think the game is being dumbed down necessarily, although he is simplifying a lot of things. But the game will also play different enough that even the best players out there at the current Guilty Gear will play the new Guilty Gear and have new things to learn as well, and we'll all be discovering things at the same time. And again, I'm not against that. I like that Street Fighter does that. If Street Fighter 6 comes out, I mean, people have asked me, what do I want to see in Street Fighter 6? I just want to see them have a vision. I want them to see them try to do something different, not based off of complaints on Street Fighter V. And I want them to make it a new game. What would I personally do? I was actually thinking about this a while ago. What I would actually personally do, and maybe Gil is the test for this, but I would bring back parries, right? And even though I don't like parries, but I would bring them back because it would be Street Fighter 3, so 1, 2, 3 parries, 4, 5, 6 parries. And I feel like, you know, every 3 games bringing back the parry mechanic. But if they implement it so that everybody has universal parries like Gil, so that they actually have a whiff animation and do it that way, I think that would be kind of interesting, to be honest with you. I really think that would be kind of an interesting way to implement parries again, is to bring it back, but make it a command so that you can't option select it with your movement, with moving forward and crouching. And then everybody has the parry, but it's kind of done in a way that it's more obvious on how to punish, etc., etc. So if you parry in the air, for example, you have delay and maybe you land with a few extra frames of recovery so people can punish you, so you can't jump, parry, throw like you can in Third Strike and stuff like that. I think that would actually be kind of interesting to do something like that. So I don't think Street Fighter 6 is going to get announced anytime soon. I personally don't believe it's going to get announced anytime soon, Burst Dark. Like everyone keeps saying they feel like this is the last year of Street Fighter 5. I personally don't believe it, and I personally don't want it to be. Because, as I've explained to people, I feel like Street Fighter 4, Ultra Street Fighter 4 could have and should have lived an extra year to give Street Fighter 5 more time to bake. So whatever year they plan to release Street Fighter 6, put it off another year, bake it a little bit more, and then give us the game, please. Please. That's kind of how I would like to do Street Fighter 6, to be honest. So if Lab Zero gets to work on a Darkstalkers, I would definitely go talk to Mike Z, and I would be like, please hire me as a combat designer and as an artistic designer. Hire me, hire Richmond Lee, take the 2 of us and make sure that we have all the decisions behind aesthetic, behind mood, behind how you convey the jokes in the game, how you convey the violence and the sexuality, etc. Shout outs to Scooter Bombs for the Prime sub. Much appreciated, good sir. Again, if you actually enjoy these new streams where I talk to the stream and have conversations and talk about fighting games and stuff like that, subscriptions and stuff are all very much appreciated. It is 5:30. I did say I was going to switch over to playing some Street Fighter 5 at this point in time. Hit 1s in the chat if you want me to go to Street Fighter 5 lobbies, 2 in the chat if you would like for me to talk for another 15 minutes and hang out a little bit and talk a little bit more. Let me know. The new Darkstalkers, I would probably... Okay, 2, 2, 1... 2. I'm getting more 2s here. So I've got 3 2s here, right? 4 2s right now. Scooter Bomb doesn't care. ¿Por qué no los dos? A lot of people said more chatting. Okay, so let's keep the chatting going a little bit here. No, you don't need to go crazy with this right now. I would try to make it 3D models. I would try to make Darkstalkers 3D models, but that's why you would have to also hire Richmond Lee to make sure that we get all of the proper 2D animation styles into the game. Talk to you with my sexy voice. That's what I would do. I would definitely try to make sure that I don't know if I have a sexy voice, to be honest with you. So MVC3 a little bit with a lot more stretching and stuff like that. There would have to be a lot of crazy things happening in that game. Like Lord Raptor would have to have an invisible chainsaw and an invisible buzzsaw attached to his leg at 100% of the time, so that when he does some of those moves that they change and stuff. Because if you notice something, look at the way Dalsum actually does his moves in Street Fighter 5. When he stretches his limbs, his legs kind of stretch, right? But the thing is, they don't thin significantly, right? Like, I feel like that's what Darkstalkers is. If Lord Raptor had a leg that was this thick and he did his towards heavy kick where it turns into the chainsaw and he stretches his leg out, when it stretches, it also thins. It gives it that kind of rubber feel to it that when you pull on it, you steal volume from the width to add to the length, right? That is what you'd have to do for DarkStalkers. But you want to do it in 3D because you need to have the fancy animations for a lot of things now. You know, that's the kind of thing. And it's going to be very, very, very hard to replicate. I mean, even the Pyron that they have for the gill suit is kind of weird because it's kind of hard to see. They tried to replicate what Pyron does in 2D in 3D, and it looks kind of odd, right? ArcSys has that experience, but they also do it one frame at a time. They stretch and pull and do everything one frame at a time, so it's a combination of both. If we were going to do it, I would do 3D modeling in the ArcSys style for DarkStalkers. That would clearly be the best way to do it. But even as I mean, I'm trying to think right now, who is the craziest character in ArcSys games that has weird things like limbs turning into different objects and stuff like that? Is there a character that's like that in the game? What am I trying to stop? What am I trying to stop here? Sorry. St. Cole says, James, stop. And then Mr. Friday says he's going to faint. What am I supposed to stop here? What am I doing? Am I? Or are you just talking about my sexy voice? That was my sexy voice? Oh, that was my sexy voice. Got it. Okay, fair enough. Sorry. Sometimes I forget. I see things out of context. Chris for the win asks, do you think they're going to reveal a new game to be at EVO like last year in the EVO lineup stream? Probably. If Grand Blue Fantasy is not in the EVO lineup next year, I would probably eat my tinfoil hat. Alex Roca says, Bedman or Faust? But see, that's the thing, is Faust doesn't really have things get replaced and displaced and stuff like that. Like, Robo-Kai is not in the game, right? Zappa is not in the game. And I feel like that's kind of one of the reasons why, because technically they'd be some of the hardest characters to actually do. So it'd be really interesting. Yeah, Venom and MVCI is actually really kind of interestingly done. I'd have to go back and watch it again and take a look and see how they did that a little bit more carefully. Alex Roca says, for Darkstalkers 4, I'd make it in 2D and rehash all materials from the series, including all of the features, game modes from rare versions like Tower Mode from PSP or EX options from PSX, and all of the content, character stages, including secret ones from all games, plus Street Fighter V game modes on top. I always admit, okay, see, that's too ambitious, Alex Roca. That's too ambitious. You don't want to do that. You don't want to kill them. You want the game to come out at some point in time. And for what you want, they will die. That's not going to happen right away. It takes a lot of work to make those characters, especially if you want it 2D again. If you want it 2D again, they can't be the same sprites they were before. And if it's 2D, it is going to be a lot of work. 2D sprites are probably one of the hardest things to do. Because when you design a 2D sprite, and this is a true story from back when they made HDR, when they made HDR for Super Turbo and they gave the task to Udon, they just gave them all the animation frames. But they didn't give them the ability to see how the animation frames moved within each other. They didn't give them a way to run the animations. And so what Udon was saying that they had troubles with is when they made like Ryu throw the Hadouken, how far does he lean forward? How far does the sprite move? What happens in those situations? And how do they make the clothes stretch and move in a way that flows between the frames? They didn't have those kind of resources. If you look at Dalsum's wind pose where he does this whole dance like this, right? The craziest thing about this, what nobody ever really knew, is that he mirror images himself. When he goes to this side, he mirror images and replays it this way, and then mirror images and plays this way. Udon didn't know that because they never gave him any information on how to do that animation. It's not a reverse play of it. They actually mirror image it so that he goes the other way. So if you look at Dalsum during the wind pose, the shadows on his leg, the shading on his leg reverses sides. He actually, you see him here and the light's coming from this way, and then when he comes over here and he goes back, then he starts going the other way, all the light goes to the other side and the shadows jump to the other side because they didn't give him this kind of situation. Animation is hard. Animation is really freaking hard, dude. So, oh, you are a game dev. Okay, Alex Roca. I was going to use the same CPS2 visuals, untouched. I see. So you would actually just take the sprites that exist in all the CPS2 games, bring them back in, and just play that way, basically. You would just reuse everything and have it go. I mean, you could do that. You would have to. But see, this is the tricky part now. This is why in one of my previous streams, I talked about the fact that there's no such thing as an A game or a double A game anymore. You have triple A games or you have an indie game. If you create a DarkStalkers with the CPS2 sprites, you have to sell it as an indie game. And then you can't give it AAA budget. You have to give it an indie budget. Because there's no way modern gamers will accept a DarkStalkers with the CPS2 graphics. The only people who would accept it are the people who already love DarkStalkers. You will not build a new market. You will not gain any new players out of this. Because if it's just that, people are going to look at it and be like, why am I playing this game that looks like my dad was playing this game? You know what I mean? It's not going to sell. And that's the hardest part about the thing. So you can't make a sprite-based game with a AAA budget because you can't market it that way. You can't market it that way. So if you make a sprite-based game, it always has to be like an indie kind of game. And it's really, really kind of hard. And yeah, the Vampire Savior, Vampire Hunter ports made with GGPO, and it didn't sell. It didn't sell, right? And that's the way it goes. That's the marketing aspect of making video games, right? When like a lot of people don't realize this, when the transition started happening to 3D with the PlayStation and the Sega Saturn, and keep in mind the Sega Saturn was not created with any 3D technology built in the console, right? The PlayStation came out based as a 3D kind of console. The hardware had it, and when Sega found out that PlayStation was going to put it in there, they had to scramble before the Saturn came out and add kind of a 3D engine to their game and put it in there, which is why the PlayStation 3D looked better than the Saturn 3D, because the Saturn one was kind of put in as an afterthought, right? Then the PlayStation one came out and started gearing everything towards 3D games because everyone's like, oh my god, you could do so much more. You have Resident Evil, the characters at different angles and all this stuff. And then at that point in time is when Alpha 2, Alpha 3, these games are coming out. And if you looked at every magazine review for games like Street Fighter Alpha 2 and Street Fighter Alpha 3, every time they would dock points because it was not 3D. They would dock points because it wasn't in 3D. They would say one of the cons would be the game is not in 3D. Why is it still this old style, right? And that was back then. So today, now that we have games look as beautiful as Guilty Gear and stuff like that, if you design a game with sprites like that, you can't market it as a AAA title unless it's in Japan, right? Like, how much do you think BlazBlue is selling in the United States, right? Like, that's a very important question to ask. Obviously, we can sell it in Japan because they have it's more of their animation style. It's their kind of, you know, aesthetic and everything like that. They've played it in the arcades, but I don't think it sells in the U.S. because you can't sell a sprite game aesthetic in the United States anymore. I don't think. I just don't think. Or even if it's just like if it was a modern cartoon style kind of aesthetic. That was very 16-bit sprites or 32-bit spritesy look. You know, I don't think you could sell that anywhere, to be honest with you. So, and that's the thing. Skullgirls Star-Lord is actually an independent game. That is an independent game. So whenever you create a game like that, it has to be marketed as independent. As soon as you say independent and then you see something like Celeste and it's in this pixely kind of format, you're like, okay, this game is awesome because it's an independent game. There's this weird connotation that when you say it's an independent game, all of a sudden it becomes more acceptable to have these retro styles and stuff like that. And that's what I meant by I don't feel like there's such a thing as an A or a AA game anymore. You either have God of War or you have Celeste. And like, I don't think there is a market for the middle anymore. It's really, really weird. We don't have any sort of standards or any sort of, we don't have an audience base. There's no audience base built for the single A, AA games anymore. And it's really kind of annoying. And it makes me mad. So, what are some good single-player content that you'd like to see more in fighting games? More mini games, more integrated things like break the targets, like home run contests, things like that that subtly teach you how to play fighting games that you don't know is teaching you how to play fighting games. See, I don't want like Tekken Bowling, because Tekken Bowling has nothing to do with the game, right? I would like to have something that actually teaches you the actual mechanics of the game while you're playing it. Break the Targets taught me how to move. It taught me how to use my moves in really interesting, crafty ways. Home Run Contest taught me how to do as much damage as possible, and it taught me the concept of trying to keep the bag from falling off the platform. I honestly think the shield showing up in the Home Run Contest is one of the most blasphemous things that has ever happened, but I think they tried to do that because they wanted to prevent people from knocking the bag off and then jumping down and then still hitting it or something like that. But those things actually, and then the platforms. There was also, you know, I forgot what it was called, Reach the Platforms or something like that. But that actually taught you movement really, really well. I think that's the kind of thing that I would like to see in fighting games these days. I would also like to see more progression, more rewards for stuff that you do in single player mode when you play on ranked. I don't want to only have your ranked points when you're playing ranked mode. I want to see that you're always earning something for something else. You know, I know that's kind of very gotcha sounding and everything like that, but you should always be earning something, and not as slow as fight money. Make something that you're always earning for stuff that you can purchase in-game content with that isn't also purchasable by actual money, so you don't have the problem of losing money by giving away fight money, right? Street Fighter V is spending a crap ton of money to keep adding these characters. They've given us these cool new training mode features. Training mode features keep showing up out of nowhere. Like, the next patch will be like, whoa, this new item is in the training menu. And they keep doing a lot of these things. How do they pay for that? The only way they can pay for that is with costumes, and the only way they can get people to buy costumes is if they nerf the fight money gainage, right? So if you can create like two separate things, one that's the stuff that you can earn in-game and buy in-game content there with that, and then you can also, I've always said like, and this in-game content stuff should be stuff that you should be able to turn off from other players, right? So kind of make it Soul Calibur-y, where you can like do crazy things like make Ryu throw beach balls instead of fireballs, make him throw a bowling ball instead of a fireball, make it so that Ryu's bandana can have weird like symbols on them or whatever like that. Give people cowboy hats or stuff and hats, and you can turn it off so that no matter what, you load the default Ryu when you're playing online versus them. But, you know, doing kind of things like that and having people be able to earn stuff like that. Make it so that, you know, you can buy different wind pose dances for Sakura. You can buy different intro animations for Ryu or something like that. Or, you know, you can change, I don't know, like lots of little things like that. And I think that would actually be kind of interesting. Yeah, NRS has absolutely the right start. They're right there. They're figuring it out as they go, and they're getting better and better at it, and they're doing it for sure. So the unlockable moves things is a little interesting because it's a hit and miss, because you'll see a lot of cool moves where you're like, man, that's really, really cool, but I can't use it in tournaments, and that just makes you sad. Like, that makes me really, really sad. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword with the moves kind of thing like that. But, you know, most of the people who are playing MK are not going to be affected by that. They're just going to be playing with their friends and play whatever they want to, and it's going to be fun times for everybody, and they can build the most broken character ever, and I think that's fine. I think that's cool.
Aw. Hi. Hi, Jasmine. Hi, Jasmine.
the beat 'em up, yeah, and the interesting thing about a beat 'em up and stuff like that, like I really want to do a break the targets kind of thing. I could do a break the targets that would teach people combos, that would teach people hit confirms, that would teach people how to get damage, how to like number of hits versus damage, etc., etc. I feel like there's a lot of really cool things that you can do with that. So I'm sad that that doesn't exist in fighting games, but that's a lot of resources. And as I mentioned in another Chen reaction episode before, is how do you convince a company to spend the money on something that you can't prove is going to sell more copies of your game, right? Because that's the thing, is having those kind of features may not sell your game more, but it might keep people playing longer. But that's not how Japan operates. Japan operates very much on, did it sell when it came out? If it didn't, the game failed. That was UMVC3. The game came out, it didn't sell well because it was less than a year after they released MVC3, and they considered it a failure, and then they scrapped the dev environment for all of MVC3. And then it turned out that everybody loved UMVC3, and it was one of the games that kept selling, and didn't stop, and it had a lot of steam for longevity, but it was too late. They already scrapped their dev environment, so they couldn't patch it. They couldn't add any DLC to it or anything like that. It's failed on sale, right? They don't recognize the long-term strategy as much. Games that come out in Japan that everybody clamors for will be in the bargain bin in a month, so I've been told. And people have confirmed to me on chat that this is actually the case, right? That's actually the case. If you do something like that, games just go on sale right away, because once they're old by like a month, it's just they're done and stuff like that. So user-generated content is tricky, Grinning Oni. People have talked to me about making user-generated trials and stuff like that, and that's a lot of effort too, right? Because you're gonna have to take into account a lot of different things. Like if you did user-generated trials for UMVC3, how are you going to indicate, how are you going to let the player indicate that Zero needs to hold the button to charge this up? How are you going to indicate in your thing? And there's just going to be a lot of weird situations going on in that situation. So Alex Rogan says, I'd like them to don't give away new moves, but I'd like to separate the costumes into parts in order to use hairstyle from a costume, shirt from another, pants and its colors from another. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's exactly Soul Calibur and Tekken. You just dress them up however you want. I don't know if you've used the character creator thing, Alex Roca, in Soul Calibur, but it is absolutely super robust, and you can do all sorts of things. The fact that I created an almost completely accurate facsimile of Falk in the game is amazing. The fact that I've created an almost accurate facsimile of Maki is actually very, very impressive, right? KI did the same thing. Yeah, exactly. So, but like I said, if the other player has the ability to turn that stuff off so they don't have to see it, that would be the cool part right there. That's the cool part. A lot of people have mentioned that to me. Imagine user-generated costumes. They get approved by the company, and then a percentage of the DLC fees go to the creator. The company gets to make money without having to pay someone to create a costume. Yeah, that's... you get into a lot of situations that way. You can get into a lot of weird situations that way. Riot is a big enough company that can probably handle it. I don't think Capcom would be able to handle that kind of thing. To be honest with you, I don't know. It's kind of scary. It's kind of scary. Yeah, the Street Fighter Cross Tekken customized colors. Oh, Jesus. Dude, there would be so many Laura bikinis and Cammy bikinis and Chun-Li bikinis. People would design bikinis with like nipples drawn on them and color the bikini skin color to make it look as naked as possible and stuff like that. Like, trust me, it's... Oh boy, you would go down a lot of very interesting paths, dude. You would actually go down a lot of interesting paths, so... Sell a nude mod for $50. They would make a crap ton of money, but a lot of people would be mad, so... Yeah, for sure, Alex Roca. I know what you mean. So, Frosty Faustings is coming up for sure, so... And that's another thing too, Grinning Oni. That's the tricky thing. It wouldn't get approved, right? But then you'd also have to know as much about cultures as possible. You'd need a cultural researchist, right? Because Japan certainly doesn't know what's offensive. If I made a costume with someone on a shirt going like this, right? Like in America, we'd be like, yeah, that's just some guy, you know, being happy and positive. And then you take that to Brazil and everyone's like, why do you have a costume with someone basically flipping us off? You know, like that is a really kind of tough situation. So that's we don't know the cultural differences between things, right? Like if you notice something, if you watch the Japanese players, right? Japanese players point at each other and point at themselves a lot. Like you'll actually see like, oh, you're up to play. A Japanese player would be like this, and you're like, yeah, you're up. And they point at you, point at themselves. If you ask them about like, oh, I'm gonna do this, they'd be like, you're gonna do this and whatever like that, right? In America, we have this concept that it's not polite to point. That it's rude to point at someone. We don't point at people unless we're like indicating someone far away, but if we're talking to someone, we don't point at people unless we're like chastising them. In Japan, they're not taught that, so they just point at each other all the time, right? There's just so many cultural differences that'll kind of make it a little bit weird, so... Selfish predation is okay. Alright. Enough with you, anime lover. Okay. Alright, now it's 5:54. If I start a Street Fighter lobby now, I may only play for an hour. But I guess I can do that right now. Let's play some Street Fighter, so at this point. But if you guys want to play some Street Fighter with me on the PC version with the patch and all that stuff like that, stick around here and I'll create a lobby, a viewer lobby. I'll invite some people in. We can play some Street Fighter for just a little bit on the PC with the patch only. The lobby will be set to being invite only, etc., etc. I will have to stop the stream in order to do that because I've got to really destroy the quality of my stream so that I can actually stream the game because my PC can't handle streaming and playing Street Fighter V at the same time. So I will have to stop the stream, but if you are interested in playing some Street Fighter V with me, stick around, guys. Otherwise, if you guys are watching this on YouTube, hope you guys enjoyed this little extra bit of content over here. If you guys do like these streams and enjoying this, please consider subscribing. Please consider donations, bits, all that kind of stuff to help support me in my continued attempt for fighting games. And again, if you are struggling yourself financially, don't even sweat it. Take care of yourself, do your thing, hold on to your money yourself. If you feel like the product that I produce for people is worthy enough for you to donate and you have the means by which to do so or to subscribe, feel free. If you don't have any money and you would like to contribute and you would happen to have an Amazon Prime, you can always use your Twitch Prime to subscribe here as well. But thank you guys for tuning in for another episode of AskJCHENSOR here, and subscribe for cat emotes just like Drunken Banana said over there. And but otherwise, thanks guys for tuning in. If you guys here are on Twitch, don't go anywhere. The stream will be stopped and I will come back with some Street Fighter V on the PC, set up a lobby so we can play some patched versions and continue testing that, see if we ever run into any of those fringe cases. In any case, I will see you guys later. Peace out and take care and have a good night.